keep seeing polemics try to knock down things like for these critical theorists, right? And but I've personally been trying to adopt in my own way of thinking and talking, approaching rather than criticizing anything or complaining about anything. I'm trying to train myself to think of it in terms of what could be made better, or like yeah. And so what really hit me deeply right now was even though I had had this idea for a while, it was seeing Jordan Peterson in a video um keep complaining about like genital reconstructive surgery, but in a weird way, in a kind of more superstitious way, in the way that I guess conservatives are prone to. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with what he's saying. I think a lot of what he says in that video is gold and it needs to be said, and I applaud him for saying it. Okay, and it's interesting that I picked up on this kind of vice, intellectual vice, from him, not because he is the one who uses it the most. The people he's arguing against, the leftists, they are the ones who use it more. But it's funny that it uh it caught my attention more when he was doing it, because he's not a person that I would associate with doing that, with being a critical theorist. And he's not a person who, let's say, uses it as much, or I think actually, to be honest, he does use it, but it's like it's never painted in that way. So it's like we have established critical theorists on the left side, right? Like when it comes to like social justice and everything, we have all this critical theory in sociology and psychology and stuff. Critical theory as in criticizing institutions in our society, the structures that, let's say, oppress people. That's what critical theory, my understanding of it, is, right? So I kind of, it hit me that, wow, you know what, Jordan Peterson is talking in this video, and the way he is complaining about what is going on, he is totally being a critical theorist. Uh, it's now, even when I'm making talking about this, it's hilarious that he is he is following that same vein of critical theory while being, let's say, a stated anti-critical theorist, kind of like he's against the critical theorists, but he's practicing critical theory by knocking the current institutions that are, and then he's rightly criticizing them, right? But it's just where I think it all falls apart is that when both sides are engaging in critical theory, when everybody is engaging in critical theory, it makes me start to think that this is not a viable way. This is not an intellectual virtue. This is intellectual vice, and that there is actually no place for this kind of thinking. Okay, and I want to run with this idea and see how valid it is, because I'm not sure yet. It's a new idea, and so I'm gonna just like go with it and see how whether what I'm saying is holds water or not. But I suspect that it does, at least to some extent. This idea that rather than criticizing any institution that you see around you, rather than me criticizing any institution that I see around me, rather than complaining about it and trying to raise a fuss and trying to get people on board with seeing how fucked up it is, rather than approaching it that way, everything, anything that I see wrong, that I feel distressed about, I approach it from a stance of what could be made better, right? Just a simple reframe, because if both sides were doing it, okay, if both the leftists and the right, both the people on left and right were doing this, what I'm suggesting, approaching it from a stance of what could be made better, then they would not be in opposition to each other. Okay, so let's just take this idea of like genital reconstructive surgery. Okay, so in that video, Jordan Peterson is talking and he's interviewing someone, Michael Schellenberg. I don't know much about this topic, but apparently they released some kind of files about the head kind of authoritative association on this, um, about how they're not being very scientific at all, not very evidence based, and they're informing all the decisions of like doctors in the medical community and performing genital reconstructive surgery and how bad it is and all that. And of course, I'm not arguing against what they're saying in that video, but if they had gone about it rather than trying to be critical about it, if they had just approached it from a way from a stance of like, how can we do this better? What could be made better? What could be done better? Then they would not be in opposition to any existing institutions, and they would not be putting off half the population, kind of thing, right? Like there would not be polemics, and instead the community that they would be, let's say, critiquing in that better way, that community would actually benefit. Like they would not be alienating them. They would not be alienating the people watching. Like, just or to use less better a different example would probably be better. But like I think I've made enough of my point. It's just, rather than, if let's say, if I see an institution or a structure in society that's oppressing people, rather than critiquing it, I can just be like, okay, what in this situation can be made better? Okay, and by approaching it from that frame, I don't alienate anybody. I don't set up an opposition. I'm not being a polemic, and even the person that I'm critiquing with that reframe, they would they would they would they would they would receive me with open arms. Let's say. That's, maybe I'm being too naive about this, but I don't think so. So I want to run with this idea and see how valid this idea is.